This is a continuation of the logic video. Here we're going to talk about what are called logical fallacies, or what I tend to say is logic can be dangerous when it's in the wrong hands, when we make an error in logic. These are far more common, I think, than we expect. If you're curious about these, I've put some stuff in Blackboard from the NISCOR Foundation about logical fallacies under this week's section, and you'll also find a very long and complicated discussion of these in Appendix 1 of Writing Arguments. These are really just problems with everyday logic. These are where people make mistakes intentionally or unintentionally with the idea to deceive. Our textbook divides these into three types: pathos, ethos, and logos fallacies. And as you can see, they're flaws in terms of appeals to character or emotion or internal logic. And we see these all the time. If you're a Facebook user or you watch Instagram or you see political information or cartoons or memes of one kind or another, you'll see carloads of this stuff. It seems to be the currency of our time when it comes to politics. Fallacies of pathos are ones where we tend to use emotionally charged appeals that really end up obscuring an argument rather than helping us out. Okay, our textbook talks about to the people arguments where we have like American flag being used at a football game, and we say this is a patriotic thing. It's a patriotic duty to go to football games, or we've got this curious narrative about how we should regard these NFL players and their protest against the flag, that somehow it's demeaning to veterans, which is not what they're talking about at all. We use appeals to ignorance. These are ones where we persuade people that something is true just because it hasn't been proven false. We use bandwagon arguments. Everybody's doing X, so let's do it too. This is the argument you tried on your mom when you were 6. Everybody else gets to wear this, and I don't. And of course, it worked just as well now as it did then. Okay. We have pity arguments where we put like that dog picture I showed you a while ago when we talked about logic. 599 pit bulls are euthanized and 1 pit bull saved. That's an appeal to pity, and it's not a logical basis for taking action. Okay, or we distract with some kind of an irrelevant point. Okay, so these are arguments or fallacies of pathos. So these are things to avoid. These are not things to practice. Next are fallacies of ethos, and these are actually fairly common ones where we attack a person rather than a person's position, what we call an ad hominem attack. Or we get some attractive spokesperson to make a case and say, well, here's this famous person. She likes to drink smart water like Jennifer Aniston does over here. So she must know what she's doing because she's famous and attractive, so it's okay. Poisoning a well is sort of like what you see going on in here, where you were attacking the person, but we're discrediting him in a particular way by connecting him to symbols that we associate with Nazi Germany in World War II. And that is not an accurate description of him at all. Okay, but it is a gross oversimplification. It's also a gross discrediting of a person and connecting him to something that we find really inappropriate to make him look bad. Okay. Another famous example of this false authority kind of stuff is in the old days when we used to have cigarette ads on TV and in magazines and stuff. We almost always had physicians or dentists as figures in it saying, well, if you're going to smoke these. This is the best kind. And of course, it's really kind of silly, but there we are. Okay. Logos is where the most interesting ones come from, and these are the most complex. Okay, we make hasty generalizations. We have a little tiny bit of evidence, and we make some broad claim. We take the part for a whole. We take just part of a claim, and claiming is true for all the parts. One of my favorites is post hoc ergo propter hoc is improper reasoning from cause to effect, and begging the question or circular reasoning. And I found, as you may have noticed, all these sort of memes from football and other sports referees who are making judgments about these. And I'll see if I can remember to put a link in the Blackboard for you. Okay. This is one of my favorites. This is about Miley Cyrus. Well, she was Hannah Montana when Bush was president, so it's obviously President Obama's fault that she's turned into this odd figure. Some people find her of Miley Cyrus in her current form. And the other examples are what we call false dilemmas or either or. We see this a lot with immigration. It's either amnesty or it's not. And that's a false dilemma. There's many shades of gray in the immigration debate, and to divide it simply into amnesty or a border wall is really a false dilemma. Slippery slope, small step could equal a large consequence. We see this a lot. Again, in political discussions, well, if we did this, look what would happen next. This and this and this and this would happen. If we don't stand up to ISIS in Syria, then the whole world's going to fall apart. False analogy, we talked a little bit about this, and we talked about resemblance arguments. Um, I've had students argue that what's going on with gun control in the United States is just like what happened with the Nazis in World War II, and that, of course, is not true at all. It's a very inaccurate comparison. A non sequitur is a claim that doesn't follow from the premises, and you'll see examples of that from time to time. 2 points that really don't have anything to do with each other. You see this a lot. If you say, well, Donald Trump is doing X. Well, what about Obama? Or what about Hillary Clinton? What about those emails? What about Benghazi? And those things are not necessarily connected. You're rather analyzing the actions of the current president in a way, to compare with his own rhetoric or his own promises during the campaign, or whether it's effective or not. You're not really saying, well, what about this? What about that? Those are errors of logos, where you're trying to connect things that are not connected. Okay, assigning a negative name or a negative language. You see some examples down here. Screeched, dictated, slithered, and those are the kind of images that this might set up with you. So loaded language is really complicated, but it's very common. And again, it's a problem with logic because it just simply doesn't work all that well. Okay, so that's the brief history of fallacies. Again, Appendix 1 in our textbook is a good place to go, and then I'll put a link into Blackboard to the NISCOR project, and that will help you with it as well.